Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today it's going to be the update to the Easy Sorc, the Magicka sorcerer for the Stonethorn DLC. Now this has been used a hell of a lot over the last 3 years. It's very effective in all content, and this has helped thousands of players either get into the game or actually stay in the game. Some people have actually stayed because of how much more they've enjoyed the game due to the build. Now, this can work for solo, dungeons, trials, anything you like, world bosses, whatever you want to do, this will be fine for. If you're a new player or newer player, it will be fine. And if you're a more experienced player, of course, you're going to get even more out of it. Now, there's going to be lots of options, skills, passives, potions, gear. We're going to go over all that stuff. We're going to go over fashion as well. Of course, we're going to show the rotation. And, of course, we're going to give you lots of different options, depending on where you are in the game, as to which way you can go with the build to make sure that you can get as optimal as possible, as quick as possible, and start enjoying the build, including a crafted setup. So, if you want to see some more of this, stay tuned. There's plenty of it coming up.
How did you do that? How did you do that?
So first of all, like always, we're going to go into the stats, the shiny stuff. Everybody likes to see this, although not everything is shown on the stat screen. So we'll go into it anyway. 38k max Magicka, 19k max health, and almost 10k max stamina. Now we are sitting on 17.9k spell resistance and 16 physical, with 3k weapon damage, 63% crit chance, and we do actually have a bit more than that, but we'll go to that in a minute, and 853 recovery. If we put this real quick, we actually have 69.1% crit chance. Now we've got 64 points into max Magicka, and we have the Shadow Mundus Stone. Now although the Shadow Mundus Stone did go down a little bit, the Divine's traits kind of went up a little bit. We did lose a bit here, but there is a choice. You can either use the Shadow or the Thief. It's entirely up to you. Both results were very, very close. But since we have 70% crit almost already, we really didn't need the Thief. Although, again, it's a choice. If you preference it, it's entirely up to you. Both are very, very close. We do, of course, not have a vampire passive here. We do not have vampire at all. You can be stage 1 if you want the sprint passive, but we're not going to go over that because we're not using it. Now, we're using flat food as well. As you can see here, we are using this shiny stuff, which is just flat blue food. Max health, max Magicka, giving us 5.3k max health and 4.9k max Magicka. You can go for recovery food instead if you prefer, but just remember, of course, your flat stats will be lower, so your damage output will be less potentially, but then you can spam abilities more often. So while your raw damage will be lower, you might be able to hit things more often with the lesser damage, so it could balance out. It varies. But if you're on top of your sustain already because of your rotation being on point, you're keeping an eye on off balance and all that good stuff, which will be explained later, then you shouldn't have a problem. Choice is yours, however, flat stuff, or you can go the expensive recovery stuff. Just bear in mind the trade-off between the two. Now, we're going to get into the skills. These are all going to be explained, of course. Then I'm going to get into the passives afterwards, including Race. Race is a passive. Now, first of all, we will go into the Daedric Summoning skill line because we have Summoned Twilight Tormentor. This is in here. It's the third ability you unlock. Starts off as Summoned Twilight, morph it to Twilight Tormentor. The reason for this is because this is the one that does the damage. Basically, you leave the pet running, and as long as you're in combat, it will hit stuff. If you heavy attack something, that's the target it will choose. But if you activate the pet, then you do get a 15-second bonus where if the enemy is over 50% health, it will do more damage for the duration that this buff is active. Don't spam it, you don't need to, just 15 seconds, apply it, 15 seconds, apply it, or overlap slightly if it's in your rotation. Don't use this while under 50% because you won't get a benefit. If the target's under 50%, stop casting it, just let it do its business. Now, you do have to double bar this because otherwise it will die. So if you swap bars, no pet. So put it on both bars and that will cover that. It's not a necromancer pet. It doesn't fire and forget. This will stay with you. Next up is Daedric Tomb. This is our main spammable. This is in Dark Magic, and this is a very unusual spammable in that it's very expensive. But because our rotation allows for higher return to our recovery, if you like, because of our heavy attacks, then of course we can utilize this more often, whereas most people cannot. Now, it starts off as Daedric Mines, morph it to Daedric Tomb. This puts 3 mines on the ground. Each one individually can pop on a separate target. However, if you place it very carefully, usually between the target's knees, if you're very careful with your cursor, you can actually make 2 go off at the same time. And it doesn't matter the size of the target. It doesn't matter if it's a tiny little rat or a giant dragon. Either way, as long as you place it correctly, yes, it's going to take some practice, you can make 2 go off at once. However, again, if your group is very clever and they know what you're doing, or maybe you know what you're doing, there are rules to these mines. They land on collision boxes, so the ground technically. But if you put it near the wall, so the enemy is near a wall or near a box or near a rock or anything small even that does have a collision box on it, and you can place this very carefully, you can make it so that then angles onto the collision box itself. So if a target is in front of a box, for example, and this mine is allowed to land on that box, they will all be clustered up closer together. That way you can actually get 3 to go off. So while this does work against, yes, a wall, it can also work against lots of other things. So that will take a bit of practice for you to understand in which content and in which situation you can get away with it. But in certain areas, if you clustered things up and bunch this into a corner or up against something that is solid, you can make 3 go off at once. It's not just dummy cheese to put against the wall. It is something that you can utilize in the game because this has to land on something solid. This, again, is your main spammable, but be very, very careful because it is expensive and you have to pay attention to your recovery. If your sustain is down, don't use it, weave in a couple more heavy attacks. But that will make more sense once we get to the rotation towards the end of the video. Just remember, of course, there are timestamps, so if you want to skip ahead, go for it. Now, Hardened Ward, of course, is next. This is in our Daedric Summon skill line under the pet. This starts off as Conjured Ward, morph it to Hardened Ward. This will give you a damage shield, but it's capped at your max health, so 60% of your maximum. So the more health you have, the higher the overall shield could be. But you need a decent mag pool in order to boost that. So basically how this works, the higher your Magicka, the stronger the shield can be. But the higher your health, obviously, the more out of that you're going to get. So if you have low health, 60% of a low health bar is quite small. If you have high health, 60% of a higher health bar is a lot if you've got the Magicka to push it that far. So if, for argument's sake, your Magicka allowed you to have a 10k shield, but your health allowed you to have a 12k shield, you can't push it any higher. It stays at 10k. But if you have slightly higher Magicka, you can then reach that kind of threshold. It's a little tricky to explain, but basically your max Magicka pushes the size of it, and your health caps it. So always make sure you've got a decent pool. Don't let your food run out, because for 2 reasons. 1, you'll be dead because you've got no health, and 2, your shield is smaller. This is used in emergencies if you need to protect yourself. Next is Inner Light. It's in a Mage's Guild skill line. Very simply put, don't touch it. This is the second ability you unlock. Starts off as Mage Light, morph it to Inner Light, in fact. And this gives you Major Prophecy on the front bar, so you've got extra crit, which doesn't stack with potions, by the way. And it gives you 5% max magic just for being there. Yes, of course, the unstealth stuff in PvP. It's not why we're using it. Put it on your bar, leave it there, get the crit, get the max magic. Next is Mage's Wrath. This is in the Stormcalling skill line. This is the first ability to unlock, actually. Starts off as Mage's Fury, morph it to Mage's Wrath. Very simply put, this is your execute. When the target is below 20% health, that's when you start using it. So 20% and under, technically, or 19 and under if you really want. Now, if this hits a target that is under 20% health, it will explode and hit nearby enemies as well, doing additional damage. If it's not under 20%, it won't do the extra damage, and it will just hit like a wet blanket. So you don't want to do that. Keep an eye on the health. When the health is above 50%, you use the pet. When the health is below 20%, you use Mage's Wrath. Now, the situation will determine which ability you use during an execute, however. If you're very good with your mines and you can always place 2 at a time underneath the target and they keep going off consistently, great, but at execute, use this. If you're in a position where your tank has been very clever, or you've been very clever yourself and positioned an enemy in such a place that you can actually get 3 mines off at a time consistently, if you're constantly using 3, then use this instead. So this is your main execute for pretty much all situations, but in a rare occasion that your tank has managed to pay very close attention to their surroundings, this is what you want to use instead. That will be explained in a rotation, but it makes a lot more sense to obviously just know that this is the one that does the more damage at lower health, unless everything's clustered up. We did have a live stream recently where we went into Sunspire, actually, and in the ad pools, the tank knew we were using easy Sorcs and pinned everything right in the corner, and the mines were all flying off the walls. It was ridiculous. So there are situations where it can count, and some bosses can stand next to a rock, and you can use that instead. Utilize your surroundings, be clever with this. If not, just stick it under the target, use 2, and just use this to execute. It's entirely up to you. Next up is our ultimate. Now, this is a flex slot. You can change this out if you want. Now, the charge Atronach is different to the other one. This one will actually do shock damage over time, and it will do a big area of effect attack as well. The other version is more single target. It lasts a bit longer, it's got more health. The choice is yours, but this one, since we're an AoE build, I preference this one. And of course, if somebody else takes your synergy, it doesn't matter who they are, by the way, this is crucial. If someone else takes a synergy, they do get Major Berserk, as does your pet. Now, that buffs them and technically buffs you. However, if it's out in the field somewhere and the only person that can pick it up is a tank or a healer or something like that, and you think, oh, well, Major Berserk is useless on a tank or a healer. No, it's not. Because if you're the only one that can take it, take the bloody synergy because you just buffed the sorcerer's pet. You helped out by taking it. Don't just leave it down there and be ignorant to what the actual synergy does. It helps both of you. Sure, the tank or the healer is not going to get a massive benefit, but at least you can still buff the ultimate that is present at the time. So do pay very close attention to that if you have these in your group. Failing that, of course, you can swap this out for suppression field and use this as your oh shit button. This basically stuns enemies. Everyone caught inside of this globe or orb or whatever you want to call it, big bubble, for 12 seconds is basically pinned to the ground. And they take damage every 0.5 seconds, which is the fastest paced dot in the game. It's ridiculous. And area of effect. It's very, very useful. That's in the dark magic skill line, by the way. Starts off as negate, magic, morph it to suppression field. The other morph is actually a heal. Now, that's not necessarily the ultimate we use all the time. You can use the pet all the time if you want, or you can use a Destro ulti. I do favor the Destro ulti in AoE situations, especially for the amount of burst it has, but we'll get to that when we get to the back bar in a moment. Now, we're obviously on the back bar, but we'll get to the ultimate at the end. Now, next up is Unstable Wall of Elements. This needs to be on your back bar for reasons that count more when we get to the gear. But it's in the Destruction Staff skill line. Starts off as Wall of Elements, morph it to Unstable Wall of Elements. Now, this will put damage down on the ground, and anyone caught inside of this will take damage every 1 second. Now, there are two variations to this build depending on the situation. If you do not have enough off balance in your group already covered, and you can guarantee there's going to be downtimes, you want to be using a Lightning Staff, because you can supply this very, very easy buff, which is off balance. Any enemies that get concussed. Now, concussion is applied by doing lightning damage by chance, and we're doing a lot of it. We have a very high chance to apply concussion to the target, which is also minor vulnerability. If you do that while a lightning wall of elements is underneath the target, you can set them off balance. Off balance targets will give you double resources back if you heavy attack for 7 seconds, and also it will increase your heavy attack damage by 70% for 7 seconds during that window of opportunity. After then, it has a 15-second immunity per target. If it's an enemy that can be stunned, if you heavy attack an off-balance target, it will knock it down. So there's lots of different uses for it, but also there's a champion point passive where everybody else can, if they've spec'd into it, get 10% overall more damage if you knock something off balance. So the lightning stuff is really important, especially for this build, and especially if you're solo or in a small group. If you're in a trial and you're the one supplying off balance, have a lightning staff all day long. If not, then change to a flame staff. You get a little bit more damage out of it, especially if you've got a DK on your group. If you don't have a DK in your group, you don't have off balance covered, stick with lightning. The other way around, use flame. So in a nutshell, the overall build requires a lightning staff. If you've got other people helping you with this bonus that you are already putting out and it's already there, you can then just go, you know what? Well, there's no point as double stacking it. I'll go flame. The choice is yours. But again, solo, don't do anything but lightning because you won't knock them off balance. You won't get your heavy attack bonus. You won't sustain. Now, Boundless Storm is next. This is in the Storm Calling skill line. This is started off... Actually, don't go on the wrong one. Go to here. This starts off as Lightning Form, morph it to Boundless Storm. This will give you a Lightning Form kind of transformation, if you like. You'll do shock damage and area of effect all around you for 23 seconds. You'll go faster, 30% faster, in fact, for the first 4 seconds when you activate it. And during its full duration as well, you'll actually get Major Resolve, increasing your resistance by 5280 for both physical and spell. That is a very specific major buff type, by the way. They don't stack. So if someone else in the group is giving it to you, you don't get both. However, this is a very beneficial skill because, like I said, it does do damage. So you can actually get close in the enemy's face, do damage from this, and have the resistance buff at the same time. You're very tanky. You do damage from things getting close. It really, really helps. Now, don't let that run out. Next up is Crit Surge. This is in the same skill line, actually. And this is basically one of the most overpowered skills in the game, in my opinion. But it is what it is. We're going to use it. Starts off as Surge, morph it to Critical Surge. The other one heals other people. This one heals you. And what you need to do, basically, is just activate it and keep it running for 33 seconds. You'll get Major Sorcery, which you can also get from potions, so we don't need those potions anymore. And Major Brutality, increasing our weapon and spell damage by 20%. And, while active, any critical damage that you do, any crit at all, once a second will heal you for 3300. That, by the way, does consider healing received, and it does consider healing done, and all that good stuff. You can get very, very high heals every 1 second from this. It's really hard to die in some situations as long as you know what you're doing. Now, why this is handy up close is because this shocks every 1 second and can crit. And this heals every 1 second from a crit. So while you've got these abilities on the ground, or doing damage with whatever it is you're doing, this can actually by default just heal you for standing next to stuff. So if you're resurrecting people, make sure you've got both of these buffs on, and if an enemy gets too close while you're resin, you can actually stay alive. It's very useful indeed. Don't let these two run out. Stagger them, however. Inside your rotation, apply one in one rotation, the other in the next one. One in one, the other in the next one. If you are very advanced, or if your group already has all the buffs and bonuses that you need, and you are getting healed very, very well, and you trust your healer. This is a rare situation, by the way. Take this off, and replace it with Inner Light. That's it. No more changes. You don't have to activate it anymore. Once every 2 rotations, you press Boundless Storms. Now you've got a slightly faster rotation and more time on the front bar. That is a choice. I would highly recommend Crit Surge for pretty much everything. But if you want to, you can just go double bar, Inner Light. You got Prophecy on both bars. You got 5% max magic on both bars. Everybody's happy. Now, next up is Lightning Flood. This is Lightning Splash to start with. Morph it to Lightning Flood. The other one does have a longer duration and a smaller area of effect. This one lasts less time but does more damage. Now, this does do damage every 1 second. It can apply concussion just like any lightning damage can, but it also has a synergy attached to it. So if anyone's near this and they see the synergy pop up and they take it, they'll do lightning damage and area of effect as well. This has a similar duration, or in fact same duration as Unstable Wall of Elements, so you make sure this is stacked on top of this, and don't let them run out if you can help it. You want them both running all the time, constant damage on the ground. Every single tick from both skills could apply concussion, and if that happens, they are going off balance guaranteed. Keep these up while you do your front bar stuff. Again, that will make more sense in a rotation. Finally, Thunderous Rage. We did briefly say that we're going to use a Death Royalty for most situations, although you don't have to, especially if you're single target. You might want to use the pet or double bar it if you prefer. Starts off as Elemental Storm, morph it to Elemental Rage. You will need to be level 50 in this skill line to unlock this. Now, the reason we take this one is because you can place it. The other one's attached to you and does 10% less damage. Now, if you're using a Flame Staff, you will get 15% more damage out of it. That only applies if off balance is already covered in your group. You are the supplier right now, so don't lessen the effectiveness of your build. But if someone else is already doing it, Flame will give you more damage out of that ultimate. However, the lightning version of it, while it can apply concussion and help towards off balance, does actually last 2 seconds longer. So while one is slightly more damage flat out, this one can actually stretch to equal the damage almost, depending on the situation, because of its extended duration. So again, most of the time this needs a lightning staff on the back bar, but depending on the situation you can swap if you choose. Gone over this in multiple versions of this build. Some people haven't quite picked that up yet and think it's rigged. No, I'll over explain it. Lightning all the time unless you've got off balance covered. Now we're going to go into the passives, the important stuff. Now, we're going to glaze over these a little bit. I do normally explain these in very, very vivid detail. I'm pretty sure most of you have seen them before, but I appreciate there's a lot of new players, so I will go over the important stuff. So, Dark Magic, you want to get all of them. What you need to do is get this for the reduction to cost for everything. This, when you hit an enemy with Dark Magic ability, at least once every 0.5 seconds, you can heal. This is Dark Magic, and of course, if you're using Suppression Field, that will count as well, so your mines do actually heal you. When you block an attack, your next ability that costs anything, health, magic, or stamina, will be cheaper. And when you cast a Dark Magic ability, you will grant Minor Prophecy to you and your entire group. That's why at the very beginning you saw me apply the mines and I got extra crit. 6% extra crit to everybody. I know it says 1, 3, 2, 0, but it's 6%. For argument's sake, I have no idea why they put numbers on there instead of percentages, just to confuse people maybe. But it's there. It's 6%. Now, this passive was changed. You restore 300 Magicka or stamina when one of your non-ultimate Daedric summoning abilities end. The resource return is dictated by the ability's cost. So, the type of resource it costs depends on what you get back. So, if it costs stamina, you get stamina back. If it costs magic, you get magic back. That, by the way, does apply to stuff like this. So, if you apply your shield, yes, it costs 3.6, but after it's finished, you get 300 back. If your pet dies, That's fine, you get it back from that too, but you don't want your pet to die. This reduces the cost of ultimates by 15%, so ultimates are obviously cheaper. This increases your health and stamina recovery by 20%, which is helpful. We're no longer a vampire unless you choose to be, and that means we've got health recovery all the time, and stamina recovery all the time as well. Now notice this is not major fortitude, and it's also not major endurance, so this does actually stack with our tripods if we choose to use those. We'll get to that when we get to the gear. This increases your max health by 8% for having a pet active, so if your pet's alive, there's your buff. Doesn't apply to ultimate. Stormcorn, of course, is very important. This will give you mag recovery. This will increase your physical and shock damage. Sorcerers are the only class in the game that get a 5%, or any percent actually, shock damage increase. So any lightning damage we do, we are guaranteed to do more than anybody else spec'd the same as us. This increases your damage done against enemies by 1% for every 10% concurrent health. If that doesn't make any sense, I'll explain it very briefly. 100% health, 10% damage boost. 90% health, 9% damage boost. 10% health, 1% damage boost. It goes down in tens all the way from 100. Every 10% you do less and less and less. But it's still, at minimum, 1% more than it would be flat out. You need this passive. No matter what percentage of the target, you will always do more damage than you were meant to do to start with. However, when we get to our gear, you'll notice that I have accommodated for that, and we can kind of fill the gap a bit at the end. Essentially, what this is to demonstrate is that the sorcerer has a lot of upfront burst damage. So the higher the health, the more damage you will do initially. Throughout the fight, you can do great, but the beginning of it is where you really shine. Now, this increases all of your spell and weapon damage by 2% for each sorcerer ability slotted. Now, we actually have 5 abilities on the front bar, including the ultimate. Inner Light doesn't count, because it's not a sorcerer ability. So we've got 10% spell damage increase. If you take any of those off and replace them with weapon abilities or anything like that, each skill you take off, you lose 2%. So just bear that in mind. Same applies to the back bar as well. Every Sorc ability gives you 2% increased spell damage, flat out. We're going to go into the Destro Staff skills. These are very important, of course. You do need to understand these. Again, I'm going to try and be as quick as I can because I know people don't like to watch really long videos, but there's a lot of information. So, this is crucial. We use a Lightning Staff on the front bar. We use a Lightning Staff on the back bar, if you choose to. But the front is the most important for us. Trifocus is essential. If you heavy attack with a Lightning Staff, you will do 100% of the damage to surrounding enemies. Yes, it's splash damage. The channel from the heavy attack ticks rapidly, and each tick can spread and do damage to everyone else near you. So rather, unlike the Flame Staff, where you do a big heavy attack, it winds up and goes poof, and one little fireball comes out, or two actually. This just channels a continuous zap and devastates in area of effect. So this is very important. You must have this passive. Now, alongside of that, we will need this, of course, destruction staff abilities, including lights and heavies, ignore penetration, or resistances even. This increases your chance to apply burning, concussion, and chill status effects. So if you're doing lightning, you will get concussion. If you're doing fire, you'll get burning. If you're doing ice, you'll get chilled. 100% increase on your already given base. It's not 100% chance guaranteed. It's 100% on top of it. Now, if you have a Destro on both bars, you'll have this passive on both bars. If you don't have a Destro on both bars, whichever bar you're on now will determine whether you get this passive or not. So just for argument's sake, if you have a Lightning Staff on the back and a Sword and Board on the front, and you're currently on your Sword and Board bar, this passive does not exist. You don't have it. You only have it while you hold a Destro Staff. This helps us push concussion. It helps us give the group off balance. That really, really helps. If you're using a Flame Staff instead, then it helps apply burning instead. Or if you do any flame damage, in fact, even from a monster set, you could have a heightened chance to apply these effects. So understand what that actually means. This will give you magic back if you kill stuff with your Destro Staff, including light and heavy attacks. And this is very important. Pay very close attention to this. Equipping a Lightning Staff increases your damage done with area of effect abilities by 8%. Area of effect is things that hit more than one target at a time. And I don't mean individuals, I mean in an area, like a spread or a burst or something to that effect. Now, this has area of effect applied to it when you hit something at low health. Yes, the Flame Staff would boost this initial hit, but the spread is buffed by the Lightning Staff. So that's a double dipper there. That's one or the other. This is area of effect, as is the area of effect bonus from the pet. This is area of effect. This is area of effect. This is area of effect. So is this, and so is our heavy attack from our lightning staff. So our damage over time on the ground is boosted by 8% because of the lightning staff. Our surrounding damage over time is boosted. Our ultimate is boosted. So yes, while the flame version of this ultimate does do more damage, the area effect side of it does more if being held by a lightning staff. So what you do need to do is, if you are using a flame staff on the back and you are using the flame destro ulti, make sure that as soon as you fired that, you get onto your front bar quick, because you're going to boost it even more. The type of it increases the damage. The type of the weapon increases the damage type. Now, since we're going to go, for argument's sake, double lightning all the way, pretty much everything you're doing is going to benefit from that passive. Now, light armor, you're going to want every single one of these. They help you with your reduction to snare effects. They help you with your increased recovery per piece and reduction to cost. They help you with your spell resistance. They help you with your crit chance. And of course, you get 4884 spell penetration, which is very important because it means you don't have to pack as many points into pen. And that means that you've got extra points in your champion points to go towards flat damage. Medium wearers do not get this. Light armors get a nice big bonus there. We're not using any medium armor. If you do choose to use one piece, you can get 3 of these passives, which is Windwalker, Improved Sneak, and Athletics. But we're not going to really go over them because you don't need them. We are using 2 pieces of Heavy, so you'll want the first 3. They will increase your max health per piece. They'll increase your return if you get hit and your healing received. And of course, a little bit of resistance as well, which was always nice. Now, Fighters Guild, you will need 1 passive. This one. Every single time you kill an undead Daedra or werewolf, you get 9 ultimate. That's crazy, especially since you're doing a lot of area of effect damage and you will get most of the kills. So you will get ultimate faster and you can spam your ultimate afterwards. Mages Guild, you don't necessarily need these passives because we're not really taking advantage of the whole skill line, but there is one in particular you will want. And that is this one here. This will increase your maximum magic by 2% and your recovery by 2% for each ability slotted. So if you have this on the front bar, you get the 5% initially, plus the 2% on top, plus the recovery. And if you have it on the back bar, you have it on both bars. So that helps. Undaunted is incredibly important. If you take any synergy in the world, you will get 4% of all your resources back. Take all the synergies. They're all beneficial. They are meant for you and your group to take. So do it. And of course, if you use different types of armor, you will get 2% for each different type. We're using heavy and light. So we get 2 different bonuses, 4% across the board. Health, magic, and stam. Now, you will want to take advantage of your racial passives in any way, shape, or form that you can. But for this particular build, I've chosen a high elf. You can choose any race you like, but just consider what you gain or lose on your race choice. For us, we have resource return for using our abilities. So if we use a magic based ability, we get 640 stamina back, and this can happen once every 6 seconds. We use magic abilities all the time. We are going to get 640 stamina back every 6 seconds, as long as that's how you keep your skills flowing, which means we can block and dodge and sprint much more often in comparison to other races, which is really helpful. And then if you're using a channeled ability, so for example your heavy attack, then of course you will still benefit from the 5% less damage bonus as well. So anything that's channeled, you will get that bonus. That's the only thing we've got that channels, full stop, I believe, except for when you're actually recasting the pet, but that's very small. But still, it's a nice bonus nonetheless. You are going to be heavy attacking, you take less damage when you do so. This increases your max magic by 2k, and this increases your spell damage by 258. I know lots of people like to choose Breton. First of all, there's nothing wrong with that. You won't have the spell damage, you will still have the same max magic, and you won't have this bonus here. But you will have much, much better resistances, and you'll have a huge reduction to cost, which will actually benefit you inside this rotation, especially if you're not very good at keeping on top of your heavy attacks and off-balance heavy attacks. So the choice is actually yours. It's not one or the other. They just tend to be the 2 favorites. If you want to go flat as much damage as possible, High Elf is going to be a little bit more for the purpose of the actual build setup, but there's not much in it at all. It's not the end of the world. Pick whichever you like, or any other race. It's entirely up to you. Alchemy, of course, important as hell. This is the most important passive in the game, in my opinion. 30% increase to your potion duration. The cooldown is 45. The potion duration is now 47, which is great. Now, that means as soon as the potion runs out, you can just reapply it again. And which potions are we using? Well, there's 2 choices. One of them isn't actually here because I didn't make any, but I'll explain it anyway. So, you've got your spell pots, which is Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy, and Major Intellect. Now, if you have Inner Light on the front bar, and you have Crit Surge on the back bar, you don't need Major Sorcery. You might want the Prophecy, though, because it drops when you swap bars. So this could kind of work out, but it also wastes 2 buffs while you're on the front bar. So there's no point. So if you're using Crit Surge, you've got Sorcery, you've got Prophecy on the front, use a Tripod instead. I know people look at that and they're like, oh, you're using tripods, you've obviously got no damage. No, I've already got Major Sorcery. I've already got Major Prophecy just while I'm on the front as well. I can take advantage of the health return, the stam return, and the mag return all at the same time. But if you take off Crit Surge and you're trusting your healers, first of all, you're very brave. Secondly, this is what you want to use. So it depends on the situation. There are always going to be choices. The game is built that way, and I'm presenting you with a couple here. Now, the important part. This is the part people have been scared of. Is Undaunted Infiltrator gone and replaced with Undaunted Unweaver? No, you're wrong. Do you know why? Because you thought Beast Trap was going to be able to be applied. If you put Undaunted Unweaver on your front bar, you don't have a stamina ability on your front bar to proc it. And if you put a Beast Trap on the front bar instead of on the back, you have now altered your rotation for the worst, and it doesn't flow, and you lose DPS. So there are a lot of smart asses out there that thought I was going to be doing that. You're wrong. But don't worry, we've got it covered. If you were using Undaunted Infiltrator before, and you were using Aether before, you do not have to change a thing. You can still use that perfectly well, and in fact, believe it or not, you were buffed. Because the 5-piece bonus was increased by around 50%. So your light attacks are higher, your heavy attacks are higher. Instead of getting 35 to 40k heavies execute only because of Bloodthirsty, now it's more consistent, it's actually happening all the time. And, because the stam bonuses are there instead of the mag bonuses, you can block and dodge and run more often. DPS is actually up this patch. If you're using the old Easy Sorc, you have just gained about 5k DPS. As it is. However, if you want more out of it, we're going to show you how to do it. So, Sorcerer on the front bar. I know. You don't have to have Perfected, by the way. You can have the regular one. We just have 1k less Magicka. This is option number 1. If you have this, you want an increased weapon and spell damage glyph on the front with Precise, and a Maelstrom Lightning Staff on the back with a Shock glyph. If you have Off Balance already covered in your group, and you've got a Mag DK giving you Engulfing Flames, swap this to a Flame Staff instead with a Flame glyph. That's your swap out choice, depending on the situation, depending on your group. If you're solo or in a small group, however, Lightning Staff all day long. Now, you want Sorcerer on the staff, Lightning Staff in fact, on the front bar, with 3 pieces of armor. 1, 2, 3. So feet, hands, and belt is fine. This will give you spell damage for stacking up this bonus just for doing direct damage in the first place. If you step out of the circle after the buff is gone, you'll start the stacks all over again. If you stay in the circle or go out and come back in quickly, you'll stack up to 10 lots of 52 spell damage. So you'll end up with 520. Before it used to give you 600 over 20 stacks. Now it gives you 520 over 10 stacks. It builds up much, much faster to get to that maximum, and although the maximum is slightly less than it was before, the set essentially has been buffed. So this is absolutely insane. You can get it on normal, go into a normal trial, get the regular version, and you are set. However, if you don't want to use that, or you don't have access to trials because, let's just say for argument's sake, you don't like getting in groups, you're too shy to host them, maybe you need something else. So, what you can do, you can use Skaven Mage if you like dungeons. That actually performs very, very well. And the 516 instead of the 520 from Sorcerer actually procs instantly rather than having a build up. Plus you've got 2 crit bonuses. And if you're very lucky, you can actually get this to apply 100% of the time. The highest I ever actually had this in testing was actually 96% of the time, because the rotation just about allowed it, but on average it's actually about 80-ish, depending on who you are and your rotation. So that's an option. You could use that if you wanted to. Failing that, of course, you can still use other stuff. You could use a crafted set. Mechanical Acuity. This got buffed to hell. So if you don't want to do a dungeon, because you can't be bothered to farm another one, if you don't want to do trials, or whatever, you just want to get in quickly, you can use Mechanical Acuity. It's a crafted set, gives you stamina, magicka, and spell damage, and weapon damage, so it's a bit hybridy. But when you deal direct damage, you'll have 5 seconds of 100% crit chance. So basically, you will never fail a crit while this is active. You glow blue, it's amazing. 18-second cooldown from the initial landing of it, so you actually get a 13-second gap. With it being on your front bar, you can never accidentally fire it on the back, so you've got control over it now. 100% chance to fire if you do direct damage, so just fire a light attack. Absolutely insane, especially during off-balance heavy attacks. This, combined with this, Medusa, which was drastically changed, was a solid combination in comparison to Sorcerer, because it gives loads and loads of crit now, which it didn't do before, and it gives you minor force all the time. We never need a beast trap ever again. If you put this on your chest and legs, or chest and something else, and your jewelry, this is on both bars, you never need a beast trap. So our previous setup where you had that as an option, where you had to lose crit surge in order to allow for a beast trap and then rely on your healers, nope, you can still keep it on and still benefit from this. For the first time in a long time, without changing anything, we can have minor force just like everybody else did. We don't have to slot it. How cool is that? Now, the difference was, Sorcerer could eventually build up to a more consistent overall damage output if you stood still. If you move, however, you might lose your stacks. It's a very advanced set. It's a lot easier to use than it was before, but it's still advanced. Acuity, however, you can have full control of. So, a lot easier to acquire, a lot easier to use, and surprise, surprise, the damage output was only 3k difference. The damage output, standing target in the middle of the room. I know there's some salties out there about the screenshot that I had no context for. I'll explain that later. In the middle of the room, fighting a standing target, given the off-balance situation. So we're using flame stuff on the back, of course, because I've already explained that. You can get 81 to 82k single target. Not including your area of effect. With mechanical acuity, the most I saw on it was 79. Not bad for a crafted set. Now, Medusa got changed, but it's a heavy set. So you're going to need a heavy on the chest, heavy on anything else. I chose the legs. And then 3 jewelry pieces. Jewelry, you want 2 bloodthirsty and 1 infused, with spell damage on all of them. Bloodthirsty was changed. Instead of giving you the extra damage at 25% and under, now it just gets more aggressive the longer the fight goes on. So anything under 90% health, the damage you do goes up and up and up and up, which actually counterbalances the Sorc passive where the longer the fight, the less damage you do. So it goes into these kind of balancing scales moment. So 3 Medusa on the jewelry, 2 on the body. This is from Arc Screening as well. You can get it on normal, no pressure. Maelstrom on the back. If you don't have Maelstrom, just put willpower. It's fine. Remember, Maelstrom can be acquired on normal now. And the perfected is on vet. There's no difference in it. We don't need the extra spell penetration or anything. You can go for whichever one you want. Now, there's one more swap out that got almost exactly the same numbers as perfected Sorcerer. Regular Sorcerer is about 80, 81. Perfected was actually hitting about 82. If you want to, you can change for Roaring Opportunist. There's lots of swap outs here. Now, Roaring Opportunist has spell pen, which is not that useful to us, but we'll take it. Minus Slayer, spell damage, max magic, and after completing a fully charged heavy attack, you and 5 other group members will get Major Slayer. 15% increase to all enemies in dungeons, trials, and arenas. So for you doing what you're doing and utilizing the heavy attack within your rotation will buff 5 other members and yourself with Major Slayer. Now this does have a condition. The minimum amount you can have this up for is 5 seconds. So the initial heavy attack, it doesn't matter what your stats are, you will guarantee get 5 seconds out of it. But the higher your spell damage or the higher your max magicka, the further this will go. So if you can sit around 44k max magicka, you'll get the maximum out of this. If you've got higher spell damage as well, you could maybe push for that instead. So people using Burn a Spell would probably get away with this quite well. Now, in testing, based on how this is made, the first 5 seconds is when it starts calculating. It's not 0, and then you've got to have 6.3, then another 6.3, then another and another and another to get the 5 seconds. The 5 seconds is guaranteed. Your magicka or your spell damage starts calculating from 5 seconds onwards. So all you've got to do is find 7 seconds worth of max magic or spell damage, which is very easy to do, especially with trial buffs. Our max magicka doesn't quite hit it in a trial, but our spell damage most definitely does. So fully buffed, I can get a full 12-second duration out of this once every 22 seconds. And if you are paying attention to how this game actually works with off balance, remember, off balance is 7-second uptime, 15-second down. That's 22 seconds. This has a 22-second cooldown. If you are taking the off-balance opportunity, hence this being called Roaring Opportunist, and you time it correctly, every single off-balance period, you can apply this and give everyone 12 seconds worth of Major Slayer. In testing, this and this were exactly the same. The difference is this is for you, and this is for you and everybody else. Do you want to help the group, or do you just want to help yourself? Those are your two choices, but they are in very different situations and trials, obviously. So again, to recap, Undaunted Infiltrator and Ether is absolutely fine. If you still have it, don't change it, it's fine. If you want to change for a little bit more damage, Sororia and Medusa all day long, Roaring Opportunist and Medusa all day long, or Skaven Mage, or Mechanical Acuity. So you've got 2 trial options, 1 dungeon option, 1 crafted option. You're welcome. Now, monster sets, Jeff all day long. There's no contest. Jeff is amazing, and that's my reason for it. No, I'm joking. He does a lot of damage. He does Area of Effect Breath. He hits really hard. Got a magic bonus. What's not to like? However, if he gets in the way and people don't like it, of course you can go to Groftar. There's not much in it. And of course, if things get close to you, this has a very good uptime anyway. You do lots of area of effect damage in a circle, and everyone dies in fire. So these two are probably your better option for this particular build, but if you want to use other stuff, you can. Just bear in mind you will get different results. Single target, Jeff, AoE, Groftar. Now, champion points are very important, of course. I do go into the same kind of routine with these for every single build as far as the resistance is concerned, but that's because it's a very good flat base. If you need to change them for content, of course, go ahead and do that. 72 into Ironclad, 64 and 64 into Hardy Elemental, so you've got your flat physical damage reduction and your magic type reduction. Damage over time as well. If you do break free, yes, of course, your next stamina ability is cheaper, but we don't need it because we don't need Beast Trap anymore because it's already on Medusa. 90 points in a quick recovery to increase the amount of healing received you gain. 44 into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 and 75 here to increase the amount you get from your heavy attacks and to increase your recovery. 72 into Tumbling to reduce the cost of dodge roll, which is very helpful, especially since we've got quite a bit of stamina for a mag build, and especially if you use an Undaunted Infiltrator and Ether, because you'll have more stamina now, so this is quite nice. You can dodge roll a bit more often, and you're more survivable, is that a word? Probably not. This reduces the cost of block. It's not that important, but we've got 4 points left, so we'll take the Treasure Hunter passive. Higher quality items in chests. If you've been using Easy Sorc long enough, you know damn straight that this can kill loads of things very, very quickly, and you'll get a lot of loot. So now you can get to the chest quicker and find the shiny stuff. 56 into Elfborn, 64 into Elemental Expert. We don't need any in Spell Erosion because it's very easy to cap out inside dungeon or trial situations if you've got all the buffs and bonuses applied by your group. You can put some in this if you're solo a lot, but you don't have to. And especially if you're using Roaring Opportunist and the Perfected Maelstrom stuff, you've got pen on both bars then, so you don't need this. So the way we're set up, leave that alone. 35 into Staff Expert. We've gone down a little bit in this to drop the heavy attack a little bit and focus on a bit more direct. And this is where the direct damage comes in. Our mines, our light attacks, a few other bits and pieces, they do benefit from this. So we've gone up a little bit in this, down a little bit in this, balanced it out a bit more, and we've still kept Thaumaturge because we have to. 75 points into damage over time, including your heavy attack damage, by the way. And that gives us the Exploiter passive, which will give us a 10% increase to all damage when something is off balance. We are the ones supplying it, unless someone else is doing it. We may as well take the damage buff. Now we're going to get into the rotation. So, all you need to do, really, is this. When you are on your back bar, make sure your buffs are on. Very simple. Liquid Flood. Light Attack. One of your buffs. Usually start with Boundless Storms. So light attack, then that. Like this. Nice and quick. Then, light attack, Wall of Elements, swap bars. If you can do it quick enough, it looks like this. Kind of spin your staff and you land on the front with full duration rather than doing this and taking too long to do this. That, by the way, is a tip for your rotation. The more smooth you are with your swaps, the more damage you will get because your uptimes add up. They link together better. So to recap, Flood, Light, Buff, whichever one you've chosen. So Boundless for this one. Light Wall, swap. Then it is Light Attack, Mines. Heavy Attack, Mines. Heavy Attack, activate your pet, swap bar. Then we start again. Flood, Light Attack, use the other buff this time, your crit surge, light attack wall, swap bars. Light, mines, heavy. Mines, heavy, pet, swap. So let's speed that up. Flood, light boundless, light wall, light mines, heavy, mines, heavy, pet swap. Flood, crit surge this time, light wall, swap, light, mines. Heavy, mines, heavy, pet swap. And repeat. Every single rotation you do an opposite buff. So one rotation between this and this. Between it, light attack buff. Next time you come round to it, light attack the other one. Next time you come around, light attack the other one. And rinse, repeat, 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 repeat. Now, if you want to be a bit more advanced, you can, of course, remember, you can take off crit surge and replace it for inner light. So that means you just use this every second rotation and you never press this button, so your rotation's a bit quicker. If you are even more advanced than that, and you can pay attention to your recovery and keep on top of your own resource pool by you being in control of it, by utilizing heavy attacks at opportune moments or just in general, you can get away with this. 4 of these. Then light attack swap with your pet. Light flood, light buff, light wall, light swap. Light wall swap, actually, no light after. Light mines, light mines, light mines, over and over and over. What I would suggest with that is 1 rotation with light spam, 1 rotation with heavy spam. If you can keep on top of that, you'll sustain it. If you can't, just stick to the basic one, you'll be just fine. Now, remember, do not activate that pet under 50% health of the target. Every single rotation that you would cast that pet, take it away and replace it with one of these. So in that situation, when you swap to the front bar, light mines, heavy, mines, heavy, mines, not pet, swap bar. That's it. Execute, very simple. Wall of elements down, light Mage's Wrath, light Mage's Wrath, light Mage's Wrath. 4 or 5 times, swap, put your wall down again, continue. If you want to keep your buffs up, of course, make sure you weave those in, but it depends on the fight. Sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you can't. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but you've got some options there. You've got the very, very basic version, you've got the slightly advanced version, and the rest depends on your group. Now, if you're looking at how much damage can this do single target, well, there are conditions. Remember before I said that you can pin mines in certain areas like this? And it can be stuck against this gravestone. Look, you hold the boss there, that's not a wall. Doesn't matter, it's got a collision box. These 3 mines are very close together. Now they're very far apart. This will guarantee hit 1 target with 2 mines. It won't hit with 3, because it's in the middle. Even on the edge, you won't do 3. You'll only do 2. But that's a lot, if you can position it correctly. If you do stuff like this, and you use anything small that's got a collision box, all 3 will go off. Same as here. It's against the post. All 3 will go off. Same here. All 3 will go off. Shall I show you one more time? Ta-da! Now watch in the middle of the room. Depends on the situation. If you have anything like this that you can utilize within the fight, within whatever arena you are in, take advantage of it. Get your tank to pin that up against the bloody wall, or up against a gravestone, or up against something, so that you can do this. If you can, you're looking at this sort of number. This is what you can do in those situations. Now, while people call it dummy cheese against the wall, they don't quite understand how many places that can actually apply. But it does rely on your group doing it. However, with that being, let's say, an extreme situation, what you're actually looking at is this. So on a single standing target, yes, you can crack 80k plus. And I don't generally show DPS passes anymore because, let's face it, they're full of crap. They are rigged to hell. It's a very, very, very select, specific situation, and not everyone is going to be in. There are very few buffs on it, although they deem to be the most useful, if you like. But they're also very, very specific. There's a DK buff on there, yet not a Necro Major Vulnerability. There is an Alkosh buff on there, yet no Morag Tong. There's so many different things missing from that. There's no powerful assault. There's no minor courage. There's loads of different things that could be there that aren't there. It's a very rigged situation. However, since this build gets enough shit anyway from people that don't use it, here's a pass. So hopefully that helps. No, I won't be doing that in every single video. You don't want to see me do a 10-second rotation over and over and over and over and over. Let's face it, we all watched it. That was bloody boring. But now at least you can see it. Now, of course, this was asked by many people. In fact, I did put a post up on my YouTube saying who wants it and who doesn't. And it turns out that people want the fabulous factor. So we're going to go into the fashion side of it and we're going to tell you what we're using. So, on the helmet, we're using a heavy glass. Ooh, very nice. On the chest is a light Trinimac robe. On the shoulders is a heavy Daedric shoulder. On the hands is horned dragon gloves. You could change those for anything else if you want. There's lots of cool ones, but that one looked quite nice. The belt is a light Dramathra. The legs don't matter because they're covered up anyway. We'll just pretend he's got no pants. And the feet are light Dromatha, although you can't really see them. I guess if someone's looking up the skirt, you can see the lights, but no, you can't really see much there. Staff is, of course, Ebon Shadow, and the back staff is, of course, Silver Dawn. Now, the two colors that we are using are very, very shiny. They are, of course, if you go down to hue, you can see these a lot easier, otherwise they're all jumbled up. We are using Juliana's White for the white areas, so you can see that's on the first one on the staff and the feet, and the last one on the belt, and the middle on the hands, middle on the shoulders, back on the chest, and the first one on the head. Now, the other color we're using is just one more color, so everything that isn't white, change it to this, which is Legate's Black. Now, you do have to unlock this in Cyrodiil, by the way, and if you don't have this, don't worry, you can, of course, get Thalmor Black, or you can get Obsidian Black. It's entirely up to you. Any of these will work. You've got Cold Harbor Ash somewhere as well, which isn't too bad. Where the hell is that one? This one here, which is basically complete the main story. They're all fairly similar, but this is obviously the blackest of the black. It's the darkest one, but all the rest will be just fine. So there you go. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. And if not, hopefully you have a better understanding of what you can do with it from the ground up. This can be used by anybody. And of course, if you use the old setup, you are still 100% fine. In actual fact, you're buffed. And if you are using the newer setups, you've got so many options. It shouldn't be difficult for any player to get into this. Just bear in mind, of course, those of you that were concerned about the actual overall DPS pass of the previous setup, what you're looking at now on live is about 76, 77 with Undaunted Infiltrator. Anyway, first of all, thank you very much for watching. I hugely appreciate support. If you are not subscribing already, please, of course, do hit that button and the notification bell so you know when videos go up. And if you would like to support outside the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, the website, XynodeGaming.com, and of course, don't forget the written guide will be there as well. There are some other links in the description below, but there's too many. Google Xynode. You know where I am anyway. You found me. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.